Another watched his family die in a war that seemed impossible to win. One became the most feared general of the ancient world. The other swore revenge. If you enjoy historical stories like this, consider subscribing. History remembers Hannibal as the military genius who humiliated Rome. It remembers Scipio as the man who finally defeated him. But this was more than a rivalry between two great commanders. It was a story of revenge, survival, and one of the greatest comebacks in history. A story that began with Rome's darkest defeat and ended with Hannibal fighting for his own survival. In 216 BC, Rome assembled the largest army in its history. Nearly 80,000 men marched south to crush Hannibal once and for all. The Romans outnumbered him almost 2-1 and were confident victory was within reach. Instead, they marched into a trap. At Cannae, Hannibal allowed the Roman army to push into the center of his line. As the Romans advanced, Carthaginian troops closed in from both sides while Hannibal's cavalry swept around behind them. Within hours, the Roman army was surrounded. What followed was one of the worst defeats in Roman history. Tens of thousands of soldiers were killed. Others were trapped so tightly they could barely raise their weapons. By the end of the day, Rome's greatest army had been destroyed. Among the few survivors was a young officer named Scipio. As news of the disaster spread, panic swept across Italy. Many believed Rome's days were numbered. Hannibal was now only days away from the city itself. But the attack never came. Hannibal believed Rome would surrender after such a devastating defeat. Instead, Rome refused to break. And while Hannibal waited for peace, the Republic began preparing for a war that would last more than a decade. While Hannibal kept Rome occupied in Italy, another war was being fought in Spain. The region was vital to Carthage. Its silver mines funded armies, and its ports supplied Hannibal with men and resources. For years, Scipio's father and uncle had successfully challenged Carthaginian power there. Then, in 211 BC, everything fell apart. Believing they finally had the advantage, the two brothers split their forces to attack separate enemy armies. It was a costly mistake. One Roman force was abandoned by its allies and overwhelmed. The other found itself surrounded and destroyed. Within days, both Scipios were dead. Years of Roman progress in Spain vanished almost overnight. For Carthage, it was a major victory. For the young Scipio, it was personal. The war had already brought Rome to the brink of collapse. Now it had taken his father and uncle as well. When the Senate asked for a volunteer to continue the campaign in Spain, few stepped forward. The province had become a graveyard for Roman commanders. Then Scipio offered himself. He was only 24 years old and lacked the experience many believed the position required. But unlike other Roman generals, he was no longer fighting for glory. He was fighting for revenge. Scipio had spent most of his adult life fighting Carthage. He had survived Cannae, witnessed Rome's greatest failures, and watched Hannibal outmaneuver Roman armies time and time again. Unlike many Roman commanders, he understood a difficult truth. The old way of fighting was not enough. For years, Rome had relied on discipline, numbers, and tradition. Against Hannibal, those advantages had repeatedly failed. If Rome was going to win this war, it would have to adapt. When Scipio arrived in Spain in 210 BC, he immediately began rebuilding the Roman position. He trained his soldiers relentlessly and encouraged flexibility on the battlefield. Rather than simply copying traditional Roman tactics, he studied what had made Hannibal so successful. Scipio learned from his enemy. Within months, he had transformed his army into a faster and more adaptable force. Then, in 209 BC, he saw an opportunity. 3 Carthaginian armies controlled Spain, making a direct confrontation impossible. Instead of attacking the armies, Scipio chose a target no one expected: the city of New Carthage. It was the heart of Carthaginian power in Spain, and capturing it could change the course of the war. In 209 BC, Scipio made his move. Rather than confronting the Carthaginian armies directly, he marched on New Carthage, the center of Carthaginian power in Spain. The attack caught the defenders completely by surprise. Within a single day, the city fell. The victory gave Rome control of vast supplies of weapons, silver, and treasure. More importantly, it gave Scipio something even more valuable: support. Many local tribes had remained loyal to Carthage only because their families were being held hostage. After capturing the city, Scipio released many of these captives, earning the trust of communities across Spain. One by one, Carthage's allies began switching sides. Over the next few years, Scipio continued his campaign, defeating Carthaginian forces and steadily expanding Roman control. The decisive moment came in 206 BC at the Battle of Ilipa. Facing a larger army, Scipio once again relied on deception. After conditioning the enemy to expect the same formation day after day, he suddenly changed his deployment and struck where the Carthaginians were weakest. The plan worked perfectly. The Carthaginian army collapsed, and with it, Carthage's hopes of holding Spain. In just 4 years, Scipio had reversed nearly every Roman setback in the region. Spain was lost, and for the first time since Cannae, the momentum of the war belonged to Rome. By 206 BC, Carthage had lost Spain. The silver, manpower, and resources that had sustained Hannibal's campaigns for years were now in Roman hands. Many senators believed the war was already won. Scipio disagreed. As long as Hannibal remained in Italy, the threat to Rome still existed. Rather than waiting for the war to slowly end, Scipio proposed a bold solution: invade Africa. The plan was risky, but it offered something Rome had never achieved during the war: the chance to force Hannibal onto the defensive. In 204 BC, Scipio crossed the Mediterranean and landed in North Africa with an army that included many survivors of Cannae. For these men, the campaign was about more than victory. It was about redemption. Scipio quickly began raiding Carthaginian territory, bringing the war to the enemy's doorstep for the first time. The invasion sent shockwaves through Carthage. Desperate to stop the Romans, the Carthaginians assembled new armies and rushed to confront them. But Scipio continued to outmaneuver his opponents. Through a combination of clever planning and aggressive attacks, he inflicted a series of defeats that left Carthage running out of options. For over a decade, Hannibal had threatened Rome. Now, Rome was threatening Carthage. And with the situation growing more desperate by the day, Carthage made a decision it had hoped to avoid. It recalled Hannibal from Italy. For more than 15 years, Hannibal had fought in Italy. He had won some of the greatest victories in military history and brought Rome closer to defeat than any enemy before him. Yet, Rome still stood. Now, with Roman armies threatening Carthage itself, Hannibal received the order he had long feared: return home. The decision marked the end of a campaign that had consumed much of his life. Everything he had worked for in Italy would be left behind. But Carthage had no choice. Without Hannibal, the city could not hope to survive. In 203 BC, he sailed back to Africa and began assembling every soldier available for one final battle. The fate of Carthage now rested on a single confrontation. For years, Scipio and Hannibal had fought each other from opposite sides of the Mediterranean. Now, for the first and only time, they would meet face to face. The stage was set for one of the most famous battles in history, a battle that would decide the future of Rome, Carthage, and the entire Mediterranean world. In 202 BC, the war reached its final chapter. On the plains near Zama, two of the greatest commanders of the ancient world finally faced each other. For Hannibal, it was his last chance to save Carthage. For Scipio, it was the opportunity to finish the war that had begun at Cannae. Hannibal opened the battle with 80 war elephants, hoping to break the Roman lines before the infantry engaged. But Scipio was prepared. He arranged his soldiers in a way that allowed the elephants to pass through gaps in the Roman formation. Confused by blaring horns and a storm of javelins, many of the animals panicked and charged back into their own army. The battle quickly turned against Carthage. Meanwhile, Rome's cavalry gained the upper hand and drove Hannibal's horsemen from the field. The fighting then shifted to the infantry. For hours, both sides struggled for control. Hannibal's veterans, hardened by years of campaigning in Italy, fought with remarkable discipline and experience. But the Romans refused to break. Then came the decisive moment. Having chased away the Carthaginian cavalry, the Roman horsemen returned to the battlefield and struck Hannibal's army from behind. Caught on two fronts, the Carthaginian line collapsed. Thousands were killed. Thousands more surrendered. For the first time in his career, Hannibal had been decisively defeated. The Second Punic War was over. Rome had survived. And for the young survivor who escaped the massacre at Cannae, the revenge was finally complete. Hannibal escaped the battlefield, but Carthage would never recover. Rome emerged from the war stronger than ever, becoming the dominant power of the Mediterranean. For Scipio, the journey that began with a desperate escape from Cannae had ended in total victory. The Republic had survived its darkest hour. Hannibal had spent years trying to break Rome. In the end, Rome broke him first.